Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Meltdown Abroad.
In this week's episode, we're talking about a few of the things that families can underestimate when they're moving their families abroad.
Enjoy the episode. Hi, Tara.
Hey, Chanel. It's nice to see you.
It is nice to see you this week.
So, did you have a meltdown this week?
Yes, I think I had a meltdown that might be a shared experience.
Okay.
Holiday. It's long weekend month.
Oh, yeah.
The month of
May. Yeah.
And we live in Germany, who generally has a short weekend.
Yeah.
The stores are closed on Sundays. And so having a long weekend where the holiday falls on a Thursday or Friday is becoming a nightmare, especially in this month.
It's so hard to shop.
It's so hard to shop.
It's crazy because here, because the shops are closed Sunday, you know that already.
It's limited.
Right, but then if it's also closed Friday, you have to do so much advanced planning. Mm-hmm. The portions are all much smaller when you buy them anyway. Mm-hmm. But then when you go to the store...
And this is the grocery store, by the way, and we're not talking about clothes shopping.
Right. This is going to the grocery store,
Yeah.
exactly. But like on a Thursday, if then you go because if Friday it's closed, I mean, the sheer number of people that will be in these very tiny grocery stores, that's one. But the other bit is that there's so many things that are missing.
You're like, am I going to eat this weekend?
Right?
Will I have
crazy.
food? And if you're someone who meal preps the following week, like, forget about it. Just know that there's no meal prep happening.
Yeah, you can't do that.
So yes. So basically every other weekend this month is a long weekend. Yes. And it's already begun where one is either I forget and then I'm scrambling last minute to get the scraps. I mean, I can't tell. I bought Easter eggs, the remainder of Easter eggs, because there are no eggs in the store. So I'm like, okay, pre-boiled eggs. Here we go.
It's so funny you say that. I feel like that is the one thing that I have regularly had meltdowns over the whole time I've lived here. Like it doesn't change.
Sometimes I'm like, we just need capitalism here. I want the stores open. I work during the week. I work in the evenings. I have Saturday to have a social life and to shop.
Yeah. And it's hard, like, in one day to actually do all of the shopping that you would possibly need if you can't during the week. It's really tricky to get it all done. And then you feel like all you're doing on Saturday is shopping, and that was the one day that you had.
Yeah. So that's the meltdown.
Yeah, I get it.
And I'm sure anybody living in Southern Europe or Germany, wherever it is that we have, wherever they have their Sundays closed, it's not fun.
Yeah, it's a little tricky.
Yeah,
for sure. And that trickiness lasts. Though actually, we're talking about trickiness.
I was about to say that. It falls in line with this week's episode on what to not expect, right?
That's right, because there's so many things that, you prepare, of course, but there's a lot of things that I think we underestimate before we move. And some of them we've talked about in different episodes, and it's just kind of a nice moment, I think, to just look at those collectively, right?
Yeah. I mean, a little bit off topic, but I just remembered the first time I traveled to Africa, I went to Senegal, and it was during the month of Ramadan. So that's another cultural thing that you have to consider. Like, things look very different and when you're not part of that world.
Yeah, no, in preparing for what's going on in the country that you're going to and when. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, there's so many things, like particularly when you have kids, like one is that their emotional response to moving might not be as you'd expect, and it might be delayed and kind of unpredictable, right?
Yeah, so I think this episode we can really focus on the children, because we have had other episodes where we've kind of mentioned like preparing for adults.
Yeah.
But for the kids, I think it can definitely look a lot different with their emotional responses, whether they're uncomfortable with the move, whether they're excited for the move, whether they're fearful of the move. And particularly the younger kids who I work with, what I find is that a lot of them don't have the language to express what's going on, nor do they really have the cognitive awareness, like the full awareness of what's happening. And so a lot of what we see ends up behavioral.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not always, articulated as I'm worried about this or I'm scared about that. It comes out in how we're acting, and that can be anger, frustration, or shutdown. It can look a lot of different
It
ways.
can look a lot of different ways. And it's not always timed when you'd expect it to be timed.
Yeah.
It could be before the move, right during the move itself, the transition, or it can even be like many months after. They're just triggered by a memory and they just shut down. They realize it's like the reality has just hit that I'm stuck here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Because kids don't have a great concept of time.
No.
And so all these things that the adults focus on about how many months we have or when something is happening, younger kids have a very, very hard time relating that to their own experience and doing anything about it.
Yeah. So, doing anything about it like that, just not having any sense of control. And we know with kids, like predictability, routines, give them a sense of control and help them to know what's happening next. But when you're making a big life-changing move, a lot of the times you can't have the predictability and the routine as you're doing that transition. That doesn't exist. So they literally have lost all sense of control.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to build that back into their system, being able to regulate them back into this.
Yeah.
And like I can relate a lot to this from my experience of being a child who moved between countries a lot.
Yeah.
And I just remembered, like, sometimes it would just be, you're going to be here for a year. And that year felt so abstract that I didn't really, like, what does that even mean, a year? Or you're here for the summer. You're here for the summer break.
And then what do you do? Like, then what do my relationships look like? Then how do I do all the things if I know this will be so temporary?
Exactly. Yeah. So I know, like, for me personally, like, one of the things that really impacted me moving back and forth was, even though I am a very social person, I didn't really hold on to friendships as much. And particularly when I lived in one country versus another, because one country, I would always move different. Like, every time I was there, it was a different home in a different city. Whereas the other location was a little bit more stationary.
Okay.
But yeah, there are some things that kids, it sits in your brain. So even though as the adult, like, we try to explain it to them as best as you can, there's this thing that it becomes harder for the child to not only articulate that this feels hard and challenging for me, but because they don't know how to articulate it, it's almost like something that they have to now internalize and deal with and process on their own, and this bubble just kind of builds.
Yeah.
So, and it can erupt at any time.
Yeah, and it's tricky. I think sometimes it can come out of nowhere for parents because of that, right?
Yeah.
But certainly giving everybody a lot of grace in the transition is really helpful. But I do think that having ways of helping our kids really pull together all their identities, the things, the experiences, the people, the relationships, and pulling those things together so that they feel like there is a sort of coherent piece, where you're really, we take things from all the places where we spend time, and those things that we take with us don't go away when we go away. And relationships do change, and that can be really hard for kids, particularly when they're younger and they don't have the capacity to sort of navigate the, staying in touch via technology and other things that older kids can do.
Yeah, they don't have access to their friends every day, so they don't really understand.
Yeah, it's hard, and when we're little, a lot of the relationship is based on common experience, shared doing things, and that becomes really tricky then when you lose those pieces.
Yeah, so I guess it's figuring out, how do we have the conversations, but what else can we build outside of having conversations to support the kids with these transitions and with these moves? And I know in our last episode we talked about memories and how important it is to link certain memories with certain things. It can really reduce anxiety, and that can look like, that your first trip to this new place, maybe they get to bring their friends or a very close family member, so that experience is with someone familiar. It doesn't feel so scary, and maybe the response of the person, like their friend or their family member, changes their response to it. Because if they're excited, then I know for the younger ones, they can be so impressionable that they suddenly become really excited about this new place.
But this is a nice idea, which is, the idea that you go and maybe, if it's possible, it's not always, but if it's possible, to go and visit the place where you're going to be moving, and if there's someone that already, that the kids have some good familiarity with in that place, or if they don't, bringing someone with you to experience it too, so that they have this sort of sense that it's safe. It's not always possible to do, but when it is, it's really helpful. I also think that there's so much newness. And when you think about kids, they have two primary environments. They have school and they have home. And when you move to a new country or a new city, both of those things change. So they get, everything's shifting all at once, and all of the places that ground them, that they can navigate, that they have familiarity with, that they feel comfortable and confident in, change. And so even things like the order in which you used to do things at home, even that can be regulating, because it's at least something that feels familiar.
Oh, the routines. I love a routine.
That's right. It matters.
Yeah.
And then even, when we know where we're going to be, showing them pictures of things that are there, showing them what their home, apartment, or house would look like, showing them what their school will look like, if there are certain things that they really love doing, if there's a science museum or certain things that they really love, certain parks that they can go to, the zoo, these things that are sort of tangible to their day-to-day experience. And when we can show them those things, we at least take a few of the variables away, and they have something that feels a little bit familiar before they go.
Yeah, it's like you said. Their excitement isn't the same as ours. So we're excited about a new language, or the cool cafes. Mm-hmm. The kids aren't interested in that. So we have to meet them where they're at and try to bring in the little things that they might enjoy.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I feel like adults often are very focused on some of these new adventures, right? Because it's quite exciting. Also, it's difficult, but also very exciting to move to a new place. And the adults can be very thrilled by that newness.
Yeah.
But kids are excited about newness when there's a level playing field, when they have certain things that are very constant, where they're very comfortable and they know what's going on. When everything is changing, that amount of newness often just feels overwhelming,
right?
For them.
It's like Europe, we're gonna get to travel all the time. They don't care.
Right. That's not the context that they have.
That's not the context.
Yeah.
But even just going back to that sense of control and trying to give them a sense of what's going to happen. Some of the things that you can do when you are transitioning is maybe plan the trip back home in advance, maybe before you even leave. Start putting it on the calendar, going through buying the ticket or the process of booking a date, and then planning to buy the ticket with them, giving them that sense of excitement to go back home, so they know that they won't be gone for a long time, or that the reality of returning home is right there in front of them. If you have kids who are on sports teams, maybe at school or in the community, going through the process of looking at schools that might have these programs available, or something that's similar in the neighborhood that you might be in. It can be easier said than done. Maybe you won't be able to book all of that stuff while you're still in your home country, but it's just the build up towards it.
Yeah. For sure. I feel like there's a lot that can help kind of prepare them a little bit, right? And it's imperfect, right? They're going to have all sorts of their own responses, and so do we, and they're impacted by that. We had an episode talking about kind of the impact on marriage and relationships and things, and questions to kind of look out for and think about, but also having very regular, deliberate conversations to help, and they really benefit from those too, having the conversations about the things that can happen and the things that they can experience, so they think they know it's normal to have some of those experiences. And also hearing us talk about them can give them a little bit of language for it, if they're old enough.
One thing that I do with some of my students is, particularly the ones that are on the spectrum, we build social stories together. And one thing that's really good about the social stories is that they can start sharing the ideas with people that are already at home. So when they get to tell the story of the new place that they're going to be living in, or the new school that they're moving to, it gives them a sense of control and pride and excitement about it, and their whole demeanor can change, their attitude towards it can change a little bit. And again, it's that kids, especially a particular age, can be impressionable. So when they're telling these stories and they're getting those positive response, it takes away some of the fear and the anxiety that's associated with moving to a new place or a new environment.
Yeah. And social stories are great for kids, and obviously they're great for kids on the spectrum, but they're also great for kids who aren't on the spectrum, who can just really be able to visualize, particularly when you can take it's actual pictures of so if people don't know what a social story is, you take actual pictures of the things that were and the things that are coming, so that it's very much like this, reminding ourselves of the things that are going on, the things that we know, the things that we see there, the people who are there, and it just grounds us in the pieces that can be familiar.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's a really helpful thing to do.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I know the idea of like just what you mentioned before, making it tangible. Yeah. So conversations are good, but having a picture or an item, an object, a good reference point, a solid reference piece can be even more impactful.
Yeah, no, it's really good. And then for kids who are older, before they move, if you haven't heard of raft exercises, it's something that it would be useful to look into. But essentially, there's 4 sort of steps: reconciliation, affirmation. F is farewell, and T is think destination. And you can go through and really kind of, if there were some challenges in any of those relationships, you're reconciling those things. Affirmation is really the process of being like thankful to all of the people and the places and the things that have impacted you in a wonderful way. Farewell obviously is giving a chance to actually meaningfully say goodbye to certain things, even if it's for a short time, and saying like, I'm going to see you in a year, or I have this trip planned, I'm actually going to see you in a few months, but I won't live here for a year, or whatever that means in the context that you have. And then think destination is all about really looking forward, to the things that are coming ahead, what are the challenges, what are the things I'm looking forward to, and spending some time looking at what that looks like. Little kids might have a slightly harder time doing that, but sometimes there's modified versions, and also there's lots of books and workbooks and things that you can access. There's my moving booklet. There's a whole bunch of different things that parents can buy and then go through with their kids. Even just reading stories about these kinds of situations can really help kids to be like, oh, that makes sense. Even Inside Out actually has a story of like a child moving to a different town, right? Yeah. And the sort of the challenges and also the positives in doing that. So using those resources too, so they can see examples of what it looks like, is really helpful.
Yeah. I think what's important to note too is there's not really a timeline for when you're going to see the impact of the move. I mean, for you, of course, the transition period of understanding and learning the environment, getting into work, building your community, that has like a transitional period that happens. Over time, it just becomes less and less and less. And as I mentioned before, sometimes it can just be a memory that evokes this fear response in the kids. And then we start to see them acting out in certain ways. Something that I've, in my work or just in science really, that shows is that these kids, when they have these behavioral responses, it can mimic other things like diagnoses, right? So what we want to also be wary of is if you're moving, whether it's a temporary move or a more permanent move, I would be kind of monitoring my child for at least the first 3 years, because anything can happen in that 3 years, and just being mindful that certain behaviors might not necessarily mean something is detrimental. I know we've talked about red flags. I always say red flags. Green flags, yellow flags, and red flags.
Yeah.
And so just kind of understanding that there are going to be nuances in their behavior pattern, but it might not mean that there's something significantly wrong. It's that they're showing up in this way because something's different and they
Yeah.
don't know how to communicate it.
Yeah, that's right. That there are all sorts of, sort of symptoms that can pop up that are really about adjustment. They're not about there being something more significant going on. But it's still tricky, you know,
Yeah.
and when everything is new, there's so much more that our kids are trying to process and figure out, and kids are resilient, they're amazing. And it's tricky also.
Yeah. But typical
Yeah,
is
exactly.
what I'm really what I'm
Exactly.
trying to say is these things can happen.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that there's something significant that's wrong. They're just trying to figure out the transition, and that can be sort of a bumpy ride.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think for the older kids that getting a sense of control can really just mean really embedding them into the community, or I don't know if you've had this with your clients where they might also have this very delayed response of I just miss home and that's it.
Yeah, I think it comes in waves. You know, I think, you know, kids are very in the moment that they're in, and sometimes they're very, you know, they're in their new classroom and they're figuring things out and they're making a couple friends and things are fine, and then a response happens later. And I think that happens at all, I mean, certainly in my experience, it happens at all different ages.
At all ages.
Yeah, but allowing them to have some autonomy and some choices where we can is a big deal, because if parents are choosing to move and kids don't wish to, they can feel like all of their control is gone. And so finding small ways of allowing them to do that. Like I had a client who really wanted to still be able to kind of make his own way to school. He had been living in Germany and moved, and he was always able to use public transportation. And so one of the big things he wanted to figure out how to do was like, I want to be able to bike or take the train to my new school. And that was something that we could map out in advance, and he could be like, cool, that's something I can still do. And, you know, that was sort of an older kid version of getting back a little bit of a sense of control.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking, like, even us talking about Sundays being closed, there are things like, even though it gets easier, there are things that just make life feel harder. And as a teenager, I can imagine just at some point you just kind of check out. You're like, you know what? Like, I didn't need this in my life.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, there's a lot of conversation and an open conversation in the same way that we were talking about having very clear, very deliberate, very regular conversation with our partners and our spouses. Kids need this too. Some families choose to do like a family check-in every Sunday where we're just sort of seeing how everybody's feeling about things, you know, looking at like what are the things that have been really tricky this week, what are the things that have been great, what were the mistakes or the annoyances, or where we're just allowing there to be space to process through and share. Because the other thing is that they're having an experience, but they're not alone. Everyone's having different versions of these experiences, and it really helps to do that as a family. Like, it makes the family unit closer to process those things together.
And if you're in a position where it's not a sudden move, starting these strategies before you move is going to be much more beneficial than trying to do it while you're in the thick of everybody's overstimulated, overwhelmed, and, you know, moody.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like with everything else, preparing goes a really long way, and putting together that social story, buying some of those move booklets and things that you can do, looking up Raft if you haven't heard of it, you know, pulling these things together where we can help to create a little bit of an expectation for what something might look like. We can pull together some tools to be able to help them process, and to do so in advance when we're not in the thick of unpacking boxes and in the middle of all the newness, looking at some of it of time as well.
I can imagine if you're having teenage kids, even just bringing them into the conversation so like early on when it's even in the planning stage, you know, when it's just an idea, and just letting them know that this is a thought process, and seeing if maybe they can even come up with their own options, you know. Maybe they want to stay with a family member, not make the big move.
I would like to not make the move. But there are some reasonable things that they could have some choice in, even things that, you know, may seem silly, but like, you know, you get to paint your room a certain color that you've always wanted to do. And
do some research on the neighborhoods. It helps you as the parent.
Yeah, for sure. Like, what are some cool, you know, give them a job to do something that actually uses some of that energy, something that they can have some control over, but also really get to understand a little bit better and then share with you. So like you're not the only one sharing news about this new place. All of those things can really help a lot. It's complicated, and their responses, like ours, are going to be up and down. But these are definitely a bunch of really good things to consider and think thoughtfully about before we move.
Yeah. This is just one of the other layers to think about is the kids' responses, what their life might look like, and their reasoning and their rationale.
Yeah, exactly. And if there's some questions more about sort of the relationship piece and the questions and the conversations to ask one another, there's an episode about that we did several weeks ago.
In our role recalibration episode.
That's right.
We also dive into how to prepare when you have a child with an invisible illness, such as like neurodivergence. We have that episode as well.
Yeah, so there's an episode if your child has special needs or is neurodivergent and they may need certain types of supports, and being able to actually plan and ask the right questions leading up to make sure that they have the support that they need in the new country, which might look pretty different than at home.
We also have an episode about finding your village, which is also about what life looks like when you don't have the community around you, when everything is so new, and just how to navigate that and integrate and get over that overwhelm, and understanding what an realistic expectation is for that overwhelming period.
Yeah, so there's definitely a few you can check out if there are certain areas of this process that you're interested in learning more about.
Yes. And of course, as always, you can always write in the comment section. We are a community. We're here to help each other. So please do not hesitate to ask questions. We're more than happy to answer, and hopefully some of our community members as well. And with that, please don't forget to like and subscribe and share to all your other families who might benefit from this information. But until next time, thanks for listening, everyone.
We'll see you soon.
Bye.